Welcome, friends. So today is not part of any series, but has to do with something I mentioned in our past series. That is the Gettysburg National Homestead. Before we continue, thank you again for the support. Our channel is growing so quick. Not to be cliche, but I do mean our channel. It's for all of us. History is not restrictive, it's for everyone, and I'm beyond happy to share it with you all. And again, please comment and discuss. It's always fun for me to interact with you guys and get some convos going. But back to the subject of today's video. Paradise to Hell, the Gettysburg National Homestead, aka the Gettysburg Orphanage. The town had a large abundance of one thing following the Battle of Gettysburg, July 1st to 3rd, 1863, and that abundance was dead men. The Union Army of the Potomac, under George Meade, had quickly buried as many soldiers as they could, but with pressure from Washington, D.C. to pursue the retreating Confederate forces, left the job incomplete. So the job of cleaning the field now fell in the hands of the people of Gettysburg. The caretaker of the local cemetery's wife, Elizabeth Thorne, led the process. While cleaning the field, a man named Dr. John F. Bourne found a dead Federal soldier who was bearing a white crescent moon on his uniform. In his hand was a picture of 3 small children. The idea of this man in his last moments clutching a picture of his children touched Bourne. So he began a campaign to try to identify the man and get in touch with his family. After months of campaigning and fundraising, he had finally made contact with the family of the man, Amos Humiston of the 154th New York. His wife Philinda and 3 small children had made contact and appreciated the search to identify her husband. But Bourne felt it wasn't enough. So he decided with the money he raised to find the man, he would use it for good. Many of the dead didn't have wives, just children, and they were now left fatherless. This was also a time that, very simply, people could declare a woman incapable of caring for their children, and the children would be separated from their mother, which was very common in the American Civil War, considering the grief the mothers would feel. Many of the times, family members would just declare them incapable and would actually call them insane for the grief. So with the money from fundraising, Bourne created the Gettysburg National Homestead. Hundreds of children began to flood into Gettysburg and were taking up residence at their new home on Baltimore Street. Philinda, still being touched, decided she would move her and her 3 children to the homestead. The Bournes would make her the first head mistress of the home when it opened in 1866 for the children of soldiers of the American Civil War. For 3 years, it was a dream, an absolute joy. Philinda would treat the children like her own, while her own children assisted with the running of the home. The homestead actually gained so much notoriety that the general of the armies, Lieutenant General Ulysses S. Grant, would actually make a visit in 1867. Grant liked to do this because he held his soldiers really close to him. Even after his presidency, when he was destitute, he would always find a way to give money to veterans of the war because he felt a bond to them, and he felt a bond to these children because these were the children of his soldiers. The Bournes would serve as a kind of early form of a board of trustees. They would review how the home was doing, then produce funds, whether from fundraising, personal wealth, or from something like example in 1870 when the Pennsylvania government began to pay for the maintenance of the homestead. But the Bournes were responsible for being sure the children were well taken care of. Also, the property was being maintained. They would need to hire any people working on the property. But in 1869, after 3 prosperous years, Philinda had met someone. They would be married, and with her 2 children, they would move to Massachusetts. Her eldest Frank was actually about to go to college at Gettysburg College, which at the time was actually Pennsylvania State College. So he would move into the town and go to college out of the college and not be a part of the homestead anymore. In 1870, the Bournes, as much as they appreciated Philinda's kindness and motherly touch, they thought the children had become slightly out of control and rowdy. So they decided, when they brought in a new headmistress, to find someone a little opposite. Her name was Rosa J. Carmichael. Really nothing is known about Carmichael before the homestead, but to the Bournes, they viewed her as someone who could establish discipline to the children. It is now paradise will turn into hell. As the time went on, the Bournes had become much older. John, at the time of the battle, was already an older man, but he helped with the cleanup, especially considering the woman leading it, Miss Thorne, was pregnant at the time. But now in the 1870s, they had both become very elderly, and they would not make their constant visits that they usually would. They began to grant Rosa more autonomy, as well as the power to hire people on the property. So now rumors were spreading through the town of abuse at the house and homestead. The laughter and joy that once surrounded Baltimore Street was gone. Now, a more common occurrence was the image of 18 to 25-year-old men going in and out of the homestead. One winter, a person who was passing the homestead late one night heard from one of the outhouses the sounds of a child crying. The Bournes were made aware and then informed Rosa they were going to come and make an inspection. When they arrived, the 18 to 25-year-olds were all gone. None of them were in sight of the Bournes. The children seemed fine. They were respectful, and in general, nothing looked bad. But soon in 1876, things got worse, when the annual Memorial Day parade came, and none of the children participated. Now, this greatly concerned the town, with the rumors and the fact that the homestead was always involved in the parade worried people. They were always involved because they were literally an orphanage built on the dead soldiers. So if anyone was going to be at Memorial Day, which was a way to respect those who had passed, it was going to be the children. So this greatly concerned the townspeople. Now children who had aged out were telling people in the town what had been happening. Shortly after Frank Humiston left for college, Rosa had begun to hire what became known at the orphanage as overseers. Those 18 to 25-year-olds who would indiscriminately beat the children with little clubs over the smallest infractions. The town also found out that beneath the duplex buildings in the cellar, Rosa had been sending the children, tying them to the walls for beatings. One of her favorite punishments were to lock children in the outhouse, only wearing underclothes during the hard Pennsylvania winters. Also in the cellar was a tight hole in the wall where she would force children to go for days, and then they'd be dragged out and beaten by overseers. A notorious accusation was that they would leave a child tied to the walls for days, and then place a keg of water in front of the children, either just out of reach or close enough that they would fall into the kegs, and some of them would drown and die. Now I say accusation because the thing with Rosa is she knew how to cover her tracks. In this time, they didn't have the process that modern day orphanages have. There was a general roster of who was in the orphanage, but in this time period, you could just simply say, oh, that person ran away, and people accepted it. Especially with Gettysburg being right on the border with Maryland, there was no way to truly investigate the accusations were true or not. You know, a child could have just easily ran 2 miles down the Baltimore Street onto the Baltimore Pike, and they were in Maryland. Or, you know, they run in an opposite direction, they're in West Virginia. It was very difficult for the law enforcement at the time. People like John Burns, who was the constable of Gettysburg at the time. Actually, I don't think he was constable anymore. I think he resigned, because this is around when he died. But someone like John Burns, who would be the constable, it was difficult for them to actually find out. So it was very, very hard. Rosa, though, in 1876 was charged with cruelty and ordered to leave Gettysburg. She would remain in the town for another year, but then disappear. After the horrors told to the people of the town and even higher state authorities in Harrisburg, in December of 1877, the doors to the orphanage were officially closed and the children were sent to orphanages across the country. It would become one of the first hotels in the town of Gettysburg when it became a bread and breakfast in 1915. The duplex was then split. One half remained the bed and breakfast, the other became the Soldiers Museum, owned by actor Cliff Arquette, You might know him as the grandfather of David Arquette and Rosanna Arquette. Following his death, it would move from the owner to owner until finally closing in 2014. The museum is now owned by the Ghostly Images of Gettysburg, a ghost tour organization that will take you into the cellar that has now been named the, in quote, dungeon, to see where the children were mistreated. Thanks for watching, folks. I know this channel is mostly military related, but I do like to cover all history. The orphanage was something so pure at the beginning and became so dark at the end. I found it very interesting, the location interesting, the tale behind it interesting. So I do like doing these. Please feel free to offer ideas like this. I do enjoy, like I said, I like old history. So if you have any ideas for videos you'd like to see, hit me up. No problems. Please like, share, and subscribe, as I always remind everybody. The channel is growing so quickly. Few days I will be in Gettysburg and Antietam for my trip. I'm going to have some live content for everybody. I really hope you guys are excited as much as I am. I haven't been to Gettysburg in a year. I know a lot of you probably have never been to Gettysburg, but that's a long time for me not going. So, yep, just please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one.